Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Kirk Duvoisin. My maiden name is Kirk, as in Captain Kirk. So I'm going to talk to you today about my journey from being Captain Kirk in high school in a small town called North Ridgeville, Ohio, to becoming the captain of the Joan of Arc Parade in New Orleans, Louisiana. To start about how I was influenced by a medieval saint in my Midwestern town of Ohio, we have to start in 1986. I was 15 years old, very excited to turn 16, and I was getting ready to run for class president. So 16 was the age that Joan of Arc left home to fulfill her destiny. My destiny in North Ridgeville, Ohio, was just to be class president of the class of 1988. 1986 was not a great year, however, for the world. So far, it was starting out pretty badly. Halley's Comet came through in 1986. So Halley's Comet comes every 76 years. Prophecy has it from age-old times, that when Halley's Comet comes through, there's going to be death and destruction, all sorts of terrible things. So that came to be true. The year started out with the Challenger space shuttle disaster. You all remember that. That was in January of 1986. 3 months later, it was the Chernobyl nuclear power plant meltdown. So the first quarter of 1986 was pretty terrible for the world. But in my little world in North Ridgeville, Ohio, things were great. I was entering my junior year, getting ready to turn 16 in October. In September, I was a features editor of the school newspaper. I'm dating the captain of the football team, and I'm running as Captain Kirk for class president. The reason I was running for Captain Kirk isn't really because I was walking around calling myself Captain Kirk. I was not even a Star Trek fan, but my arch rival, Chris Mahoney, was. And he proudly called himself Spock. So what was I to do but run as Captain Kirk? So naturally, I won, as Captain Kirk should. And so I was really feeling out of this world starting my junior year. I was looking forward to October. October 26th was my birthday, and a few days before that, I was going to be going to the Cyndi Lauper Rod Stewart concert with my best friend. I was going to homecoming with Jerry Godek, and I was going to get my driver's license. On October 7th, my older brother died. This was a complete surprise, obviously. He had had heart surgery as a child, but there had been no other indication of any problems, so it was very sudden. Needless to say, I did not celebrate my 16th birthday in any way, shape, or form. It was far from a sweet 16th birthday. I vaguely remember my mom handing me, kind of unceremoniously, a Sony Walkman that she had bought for my birthday that I'd asked for months ago. So we didn't celebrate my birthday. We certainly didn't celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas that year. Flash forward 18 years later, I'm in New Orleans. It's 2004. I'm not happy to be in New Orleans. It's a time in my life where I was hyper aware every year of the clock ticking and the fact that I was living past the age that my brother had lived. So I was 34, and I had lived a full lifetime after him. So he died at 18, and I was 18 years past that. So I was hyper aware that I'd lived essentially 2 lifetimes of his, and survivor's guilt is a real thing. So I was really feeling like, what am I doing here? Why am I alive? What am I doing to validate my existence? Joan of Arc, contrarily, had voices telling her what to do. So I was always listening for voices. I really literally, and you know this, if any of you, somebody's passed, you really think you're going to hear those people tell you what to do. So I really thought, maybe I'll hear my brother tell me what to do. That wasn't happening. So here I was in New Orleans in 2004. I'd moved down here because my partner, having a full-blown midlife crisis, thought that New Orleans was the place to be. I'm sure you all can relate to that. You've met those people. So we were down here walking around the French Quarter. She fell in love with Royal Street. She ended up getting a job pretty much on the spot at Royal Antiques because that was her thing. And I had no interest in being here. I'd moved from the Midwest to the East Coast to the West Coast, back to the Midwest. I'd lived all over, traveled all over. This was not on my radar. I'd never been to Mardi Gras. I wasn't one of those people who was drawn to it. But I'm walking around the French Quarter on one day where I still didn't have a job. She's on Royal Street. So I spent a lot of time walking around the French Quarter. And finally I see Golden Joni on the pony. And I was like, finally, a familiar face. Like, okay, maybe I'm meant to be here. Maybe I can do this. I had her as my personal saint for years. Like I said, I really felt a kinship with her that right as she was leading her troops to battle, I was in battle with myself. You know, she was gaining an army right as I was losing a brother and my identity, and I was really just enamored with her, as so many young women are. So seeing her here really made me feel like, okay, maybe I have a reason to be here. So flash forward a year later, it's 2005, and almost to the day that I had moved here with my partner, she'd fled back to New England. She was very much a New Englander, as it turns out. And I was feeling like a New Orleanian. I was working at a local publishing company. I was on the board of the Tennessee Williams Festival, and I was at Jazz Fest with my new boyfriend. So I was feeling very New Orleans, and things seemed to be going really great. So that summer, as we all know, Hurricane Katrina hit. He and I evacuated together, and extreme situations, extreme things happened. We ended up engaged. I'm happy to say we're married still. So it wasn't that radical. It was radical, but it's, you know, good radical. So we moved in together, and everybody knows, if you were here, that there was no real time or space. Like 2008 may as well have been 2006, 2000, it all blurs together. So by the time it was 2008, yes, my life had changed. Yes, I had a little bit more settling in, but it was still the recovery period, and things were pretty dark. My own life, we had been married. I'd had 2 miscarriages. I was working very strange hours, feeling like a zombie. I worked in radio from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day. So it was a strange time. And so naturally, I took a book out of the library about Joan of Arc. And I found out in that book that she was born on January 6th, Carnival. This would have meant nothing to me had I not lived in New Orleans. So I lived here long enough to know exactly what January 6th was, 12th night, the Epiphany. And I had an epiphany. How cool would it be to celebrate her birthday? I was a theater girl, so it made sense to me that we would celebrate her birthday Mardi Gras style. It didn't take long to figure out all these cool synchronicities, like the king cake could become her birthday cake, and all other sorts of things that just sort of fell in place. The maid was the maid from Orleans. So I put some ads in well, it wasn't really the newspaper. We weren't yet quite in the Facebook mode, but I started a blog. I put posts on the NOEW Mardi Gras forum, which is how I found my first Joan. And I put a lot of postcards in a lot of cafes. So it was very old school, grassroots. And I ended up with about 50 people who showed up. I didn't know who was going to show up. A few people had emailed me, but I really just said, just come, wear medieval costumes, bring a king cake. We're celebrating Joan of Arc's birthday. And I knew it would attract whoever it was supposed to attract. I really wasn't worried about it. But we had about 50 people coming in costume, various artists, francophones, historians, people who just love Mardi Gras, random people like a guy who brought a drum, so he drummed for us. So it was very interesting who showed up, but very, very hopeful. I thought it would be hilarious that we start by the river, meaning water of life on her birthday versus her death by fire. And that turned out to be exponentially true because we were poured on. Like the night of the parade, it just rained buckets, horses and cows. It wasn't even dogs and cats. It was like crazy. So I'm standing there crying. The cupcakes that I had gotten donated to give out at the statue were battered. The paper mache voices that my friend had made to carry were reduced to pulp. The priest who was supposed to bless the parade left, and I've never ever seen this guy again. He had started his own church. I don't know what happened to this guy. And so he was a disaster, and I'm just standing there bawling, and like out of these sheets of rain, there's Joan of Arc, right? She's standing above me, not the statue, the actual person wearing the costume. I'm not that crazy. And she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you crying? Joan of Arc wouldn't cry. We have to go. What are you doing? The parade start." You know, I don't even know what she said. I just remember the point where she said, "What would Joan do?" And I was like, okay. So we marched, and just as it happens in New Orleans, the rain stops, right? The rain always eventually stops. It did stop right in time for us to walk. The next day, the streets, the photos of the streets glistening was actually kind of a cool effect. There were these reflections, and all of us carrying candles. There was this beautiful glow. So it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. We got to the statue. There were about 100, I like to say 100. There were probably 20 people there. I don't know how many people were at the statue, but there were a lot. It felt like a lot. And compared to the sprinkling of people along Decatur Street. So we sang happy birthday to Joan of Arc. People did bring king cakes, like I said, for her birthday. People brought paintings of Joan. It was this interesting, just hodgepodge of Joan lovers at the statue, leaving things and celebrating and playing music. And a tradition was born. So that was about 50 people who walked with us then, give or take those who left in the rain. And now it's grown about 10 times that big. It's about 500 of us who walk. Thousands of people come to see it, and it's kind of the unofficial start of carnival season. So I'm realizing this year, 2024, was our Sweet 16th anniversary. And I'm promoting that like crazy. My marketing brain kicks in, like, oh my God, how cool is it that it's our 16th parade? I'm posting photos like Molly Ringwald and 16 candles. I'm really like working the 16 candles angle, and 16 years of Joan, because that was the year she was when she left home. It's actually her 612th birthday this year. So it doesn't occur to me the whole time that 16 meant anything but the parade gear. And as I'm walking past the statue the night of the parade, it hits me, another epiphany, that, oh my God, I'm having my sweet 16th birthday now. This many years later, 20 years after I moved to New Orleans, I'm having this extremely belated 16th birthday party with thousands of strangers, with Joan of Arc, who was the reason I stayed in New Orleans. And I really finally felt like her most famous quote that I always wished I could feel from age 16 on. I finally really felt like, I'm not afraid, I was born for this. Thank you.